Hello and welcome back to Creepy Cassettes, your place for horror in reality and beyond. I'm your host Dee, and if this is your type of content, please hit that like button, that subscribe button, and the notification bell so you'll know every time I drop a new video. It is spooky season, yes. At the time of this recording, we are just 2 days away from Halloween, and considering how much editing goes into this content, I'm seriously behind in trying to get this out before Halloween Day. Some of us are just looking forward to staying home to watch horror movies and hand out candy to trick-or-treaters. Some of us are taking our kids on trick-or-treating excursions, and some of us are real thrill seekers looking for something fun and horrifying to do. I'm certain that this is the time of year when real haunted houses with sordid histories are seeing a boom in patronage. And if you're one of those people who finds themselves scouring the internet for some seriously haunted destinations to spend your Halloween hyperventilating in, here is a short list of 5 of those places. Let's get started. Number 5, the Houghton Mansion. Located in North Adams, Massachusetts, this house was built in 1890s by Albert Charles, or A.C. Houghton, who was the city's first mayor, as well as the president of Arnold Printwork, which was the town's largest employer at the time. Naturally, he was a wealthy man, but Mr. Houghton started to slow down after learning his health was failing. His daughter, Mary Houghton, who had previously vowed to forego marriage in favor of caring for her sickly father, still lived in the family home. In 1914, A.C. Houghton purchased his first car, a 7-passenger Pierce Arrow, and she instructed his longtime chauffeur, John Witters, to learn to drive. August of 1914, A.C. Houghton, his daughter Mary, Dr. Robert Hutton, and his wife Sybil decided to take a day trip to Bennington, Vermont. At around 9:30 a.m., as they were driving through Pownell, Vermont, a horse team was making its way down the street going the opposite direction. John Witters swerved out of the way and the car slid down a steep embankment, flipping 3 times on its way down. Sybil Hutton was thrown from the car and killed instantly when the car crushed her before continuing its descent down the embankment. A.C. Houghton and Dr. Hutton were also thrown from the vehicle, but they walked away from the incident relatively unscathed, with nothing more than minor cuts and bruises. Mary Houghton was the only one who was not dispatched from the car. She felt every bump on the way down the hill. She died just a few hours later in North Adams Hospital. While Mr. Houghton walked away from the accident, his heart must have been broken at the loss of his child, because just 10 days later, he died in the mansion. John Witters, who was overcome with guilt from the accident, killed himself with a horse pistol in the mansion basement on August 2nd of 1914. The mansion is said to now be haunted by A.C. Houghton, Mary Houghton, and John Witters. People have reported hearing the disembodied voices of the home's long-dead owners. There are also the standard scares, objects moving without being touched or moved by wind. Mary's room is said to have a heavy and sad aura. Shadowy figures roam the halls. It has since been converted into a Masonic temple, and the hauntings are said to have really stirred up when the Masons built an attached temple on the lot. Other than the new addition to the temple and some routine maintenance and upkeep, the house is pretty much the same as it was when the Houghtons still lived there. Number 4, McLaughlin House. This house is located in Oregon City, Oregon, and it was built in 1846 by John D. McLaughlin. McLaughlin was known as the father of Oregon and founder of Oregon City. He laid out the city himself, giving away more than 300 lots to settlers, churches, schools, and other organizations. He even placed land in his name in exchange for $20,000 to be paid to the Hudson Bay Company, a place that he had retired from after spending many years as chief factor overseeing the company's operations. He was well known for his open arms and open doors policy. He would allow people visiting the city to stay in his home and was a very hospitable host. Just an all-around nice guy. But that didn't stop people in the town from finding reasons to dislike the man. He was British, wealthy, a Catholic in a predominantly Protestant area, and he was married to a Chippewa woman. Because he was British, his land rights were disputed by the U.S. government. In an effort to avoid being stripped of his lands, he became a U.S. citizen. But that didn't stop Congress from taking his lands and affirming the land claims of people McLaughlin had given land to. He was supposedly still pretty upset about the ordeal when he passed away in 1857. Makes sense that he'd want to haunt the place after all of the things he did for so many people in Oregon City, only to have the things that he put so much work and money into be stripped from him. But I digress. Now he and his wife Marguerite are said to still haunt the home, usually tidying things up or performing upkeep from beyond. There may be other ghost inhabitants that we don't have much info about, but at one point the house was used to house Chinese laborers, and then it was a brothel. So who knows what those walls have seen and what other entities could be lurking working within its walls. It is now a museum. Museum employees and guests have reported numerous unexplained activities, such as tall, shadowy figure walking around the house, this figure being attributed to McLaughlin himself, who stood at 6 foot 5 inches. The smell of pipe tobacco and brewed coffee reportedly wafts through the dining room when no one is smoking or brewing any coffee. Footsteps have been heard shuffling into McLaughlin's old room. An old leather-back rocking chair is even seen rocking by itself without any assistance from wind or other force. A museum curator even noted that at one point she felt a tap on the shoulder when the only other person in the home was an employee on a different floor. Occasionally, a woman's weak cries for help can be heard, and McLaughlin's portrait, which hangs over the downstairs drawing room fireplace, will emit a strange glow when hit by sunlight every year on his death day of September 3rd. The original house was moved in 1909 to a site on a hill overlooking the city, and the graves of its original owners and their headstones were moved along with it, supposedly stirring up more paranormal activity. Number 3. Hull House. Located in Chicago, Illinois, the home was built in 1865 by Charles Hull, a wealthy real estate developer. The house was acquired in 1889 by Jane Addams and Ellen Starr. Side note, Jane Addams was a pioneer in the field of social work, and she was renowned for her work in the field. Addams had been inspired by a visit she and Starr took to the settlement house called Toynbee Hall in London. Jane decided when she returned to the States to create her own social service hub, and the Hull House would be used for just that purpose. The lady strategically picked a location within a working class neighborhood to make its services available to both the working class and the poor. Hull House was a place for women to go and learn skills they could use in once male-dominated industries. The house had classes on domestic activities like sewing, as well as holding lectures on history, literature, and other subjects. As James Addams would put it, it was a community bonded by sisterhood. The house offered other services such as midwifery to service the poor and working class women. Addams had her own fair share of hauntings during the time she ran the house. Charles Hull's wife is rumored to still occupy the room she stayed in during life, and Addams has initially taken to Mrs. Hull's own room and had even encountered her ghost. She stayed in the room for a while before deciding she needed more privacy from her otherworldly roommate, but Mrs. Hull's room was still being rented out to some guests, and some of those guests also reported seeing her apparition. There's also the legend of a ghostly devil child said to inhabit the home's attic. The story behind the apparition is that Catholic woman tried to put a picture of the Virgin Mary up in her home, and her atheist husband declined, stating he would rather have the devil in his home than a picture of the Virgin Mary. When she gave birth to their first child, the baby was said to be deformed, having horns, pointed ears, and a tail. The frightened parents were said to have bought the child to Addams, who attempted to baptize them. The baptism did not work, and the child was rumored to have jumped up and run from the priest while laughing and swearing. Of course, this was all just rumor, one that Addams opposed in her own autobiography. More likely, the rumor was started when a child with deformities was seen going into the house. People ran wild with the story. However, that didn't stop some of the neighbors reporting the sight of an evil child smiling out of the top floor window. Other apparitions may be present because at one point the Little Sisters of Poor used the house as a shelter for elderly, and a few died there of natural causes. Number 2, the Joshua Ward House. This house gets its name from a wealthy merchant and sea captain by the name of Joshua Ward. He built the house in the 1780s on the foundation of what used to be the infamous High Sheriff George Corwin's house. Corwin was the High Sheriff during the Salem witch trials. Corwin's ghost is just one of the apparitions still residing there, but he isn't the only one. Part of his job as a High Sheriff required him to transport the condemned by cart to the site of execution, Proctor's Ledge Gallows Hill. He would also rob the condemned of their possessions like jewelry, livestock, and household goods. These items should have been used to pay the debts of felons and support their families. The only thing the law did not allow him to confiscate was land. If Corwin was known for one thing, it was his cruelty. Rumors even circulated that he used the basement of his home to torture prisoners. His cruelty was most notably documented in the execution of 81-year-old Giles Corey. Corey was just one of the 31 victims of the Salem witch trial, one of the only warlocks. He refused to comply with court procedures. Those involved with overseeing his hearing were trying to start the trial sooner by attempting to have Corey submit to a trial of God and country. Corey refused for several weeks until the overseers grew tired of waiting and convicted Corey without giving him an official trial. He was sentenced to peine forte et dure. If you speak French, I'm so sorry because I know I butchered that. a manner of torture and execution where the convicted was covered with a board and gradually crushed by heavier and heavier rocks. At one point, Corey's tongue lopped out of his mouth and the judge callously tucked it back in with his cane. Another legend was born of this cruelty when it was rumored that Corey cursed Corwin with his last breath, but no historic accounts have backed up this claim. Corwin's ghost has been nicknamed the Strangler. He is rumored to have used strangulation as one of his methods of torture. He would tie people from their necks to their ankles until blood came out of their noses, and some people have reported malignant encounters with the strangling spirit. He's joined in afterlife by at least 2 other ghosts, one reported to be Giles Corey and the other woman known as the Witch. Her image was caught on camera. She is an apparition with dark curly hair and seen in a black dress. Could it be that she is one of Salem Witch Trial's many victims? I think so. What about you? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 1. Hickory Hill Mansion, aka Old Slave House. Located in Equality, Illinois, it was built in 1830s as the dream house of John Crenshaw and his wife Senia Taylor and their 5 children. Crenshaw managed a salt refinery inherited from his father, who passed away when he was just a teen. He built a small fortune and used his fortune to lease more salt mines from the government, but he was looking to make even more money in a very sinister way. Illinois was not a slave state, but Illinois law allowed slaves from southern states to be leased to cover underserved industries in the state. So Crenshaw leased slaves, but he didn't want to just lease people to work in his salt mines. He wanted to create his own people. He did this 2 ways. One way was by capturing free black families in the area to be resold in the South, and he used the Saline River to transport his ill-gotten cargo to the southern states. The second way was by breeding more slaves. He knew he could make more money by selling pregnant slaves and slave women with children. The attic where Crenshaw would house those captures was comprised of 12 rooms, no bigger than horse stalls, with pegs drilled into the floor where those people would be shackled. The rooms were poorly lit, and there were 2 whipping posts in the center of the attic. He would torture these people and allowed his hired sire to impregnate slave women. It was rumored that at least 300 children had been born of this one sire. The first 2 floors of the house were comprised of 6 rooms where the family lived their lives and a carriageway that leads directly into the home. The carriageway was supposedly installed to make sneaking abducted free people into the house and children bred of the disgusting breeding program out of the house. He was eventually caught attempting to abduct a free black family, and he was charged for the crime. However, he was found not guilty because of his wealth and political standing in the community. He was, however, found guilty in the court of public opinion, but the public didn't even find out about the attic until John and his wife died in 1871 and 1881, respectively. It was bought by the Sisk family in 1916, and the family lived there for 80 years before the house reopened as Hickory Hill Museum. So with all the pain and injustice experienced in that attic, it makes sense that people have reported angry ghosts. Hell, I'm honestly hoping those spirits had their revenge with Crenshaw and that he's being gut punched every second of the afterlife. Visitors who have gone up to the attic have been scared off by the ghost. Some people mention hearing shuffling feet, whimpering cries, and flickering lamps. The Sis also reported that they attempted to have the attics exorcised by an exorcist named Hickman Whittington. He went up to the attic, reportedly stayed for a short time before running out of the house, and supposedly died a few hours later, supposedly of fright. The museum was eventually closed in 1996, since maintaining the old house estate code was a complicated undertaking, and many people were reluctant to put money into a project with such a dark history. What do you think? Are you going to be adding any of these destinations to your haunted house hopping bucket list? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, guys.